America is not in great shape today, but are there reasons to hope? What can unify us? Well, let's take a look at what George Packer has to say.
Welcome to Books and Big Ideas, what I'm reading, what I'm thinking about, with Joel Wentz.
All right, I have here the new book from the journalist, Atlantic writer George Packer. Short little book called Last Best Hope. And as usual, I'll just step through the main idea: research, readability, and reasonableness. So the main idea of this is pretty well captured in the title, and it's just simply that America is really in a crisis right now. There's no kind of ifs, ands, or buts about that. We're just not in a good place. And 2020 in particular, everything that unfolded over the year of 2020 reveals that in George Packer's perspective. And so this book, Last Best Hope. George Packer's a serious journalist and researcher. He's written a lot of books that are long, a lot of books that are extremely deeply footnoted. This is not that, though. This is more in the style of a political journalistic pamphlet or booklet. It's very short, super easy to read in the style. And it does a couple things. It does actually kind of a lot for being so short. It retells the story of 2020 in very kind of searing prose. It retells the story of 2020. He poses what he sees as four Americas, or four different American narratives about what's going on, and four different almost groups that have formed in America. And then he does highlight what he thinks can bring us together and move us forward past this crisis that we're in. So it's kind of a lot in one book. Now the research, that's the main idea. The research behind it is, like I mentioned, it's not like I've read some of his other work, like The Unwinding. This book is actually not footnoted or it's not cited in that traditional sense. But it's seasoned with his journalistic research. He quotes a lot of people, and it's quoted and cited in almost a journalistic sense, like as you're reading a newspaper article or a long essay. So it's not cited or footnoted like a normal book per se, but it is clearly seasoned with a lot of his reading and his research. But it's also a deeply personal book for him. So it's argued personally and passionately from kind of his own perspective. So it's not primarily a reporting or a journalistic endeavor in that sense. It's more of his own take on what ails us right now and what possibly could move us forward. So it's not heavy on the research, and it's not really supposed to be. The readability of it is amazing. This is the highest kind of mark for me in my categories, is the readability of this book. I read it, I think, in 2 sittings. It's almost like hard to put down because it's so, I don't want to say beautifully written, but compellingly written. The reason I say not beautifully written is because it's hard. It's a hard book to read in a sense of just the recounting of everything that happened. But it's clear, it's passionate, I would say it's biting. I use the word searing. It's kind of a biting style in the sense that it's confrontational, and he does not mince words about what he's seeing going on. But it's also compelling. It's persuasive, especially as he works himself around to posing hope for the future. It's a compelling vision for that. So readability is just incredible. It's very, very readable, very amazingly written at the end of the day. And then finally, the reasonableness. A couple things that are worth noting here. The 4 narratives, which he put out a pretty well-known or well-read Atlantic, I think it was a cover story in a recent Atlantic issue in which he summarizes his 4 narratives. So if you've already read that, you kind of know where he's coming from. That's one chapter in this book, unpacks that in depth. Those 4 narratives, which he calls Free America, Smart America, Real America, and Just America, those are extremely compelling descriptions to me. I think it's my favorite, personally, it's my favorite analysis of kind of the state of American culture right now that I've read. I've read a good bit, and it's my favorite one because I think all 4 of those map onto what I've seen and experienced. And they're also complicated and nuanced enough to capture different kind of angles at how people are experiencing the American narrative right now. So the four narratives, that section alone in this book is totally worth picking up the book just even for that. It's a great analysis. He clearly is hard on when he gets to the section on Real America, which is essentially, he talks a lot about Sarah Palin and then what turned into Trump, kind of the Trump base. He's clearly extremely hard on that narrative, but he's also very, very hard on the just American narrative, which is the left kind of progressive, on the left progressive side. So he doesn't, he doesn't pull punches, but he also doesn't pull punches towards any direction, really. And another thing I want to add, so I love the four American narratives. He has a short chapter in which he highlights three historical personalities. He highlights Horace Greeley, Francis Perkins, and Bayard Rustin. I loved that chapter. It was maybe my favorite chapter of the book, actually. It's very, he clearly looks up to these three people, but he uses them as a lens to look at what can actually help move us through crisis, because each of the three of them helped move America through particular times of crisis. That was extremely inspiring to me, and I love that he did some historical work to pull out some of these biographical snapshots, which just added so much strength to his overall argument. So at the end of the day, Last Best Hope I think it's an outstanding book. I loved it. I read it, just kind of gulped it down, like I said, because of the way it's written, but also because there's something really compelling about both the honesty with which he approaches the depth of the crisis and the real danger of the moment that we're in, but also the honesty with which he approaches what can get us through. The hopefulness. So it's a hopeful book, but it's not unrealistically optimistic either. And so just his balance of being able to move you through kind of a really bleak vision, but also towards hope, I find it masterful, and I don't think that there are many journalists that can really do that well. And so I think this is a powerful book. If you're a really big Make America Great Again Trump supporter, Trump voter fan, you're going to struggle with parts of it because he comes down pretty hard on that base. But you'll also be cheering probably when he comes down hard on some other kind of tribes within America, so to speak. So it's a book that is probably uncomfortable for almost anyone to read, but man, I love it. I'm so glad George Packer wrote it. I'm so glad he put it out, and I would really highly commend it as a readable, impassioned, clear, and persuasive take on the state of our country and our culture right now. So that's Last Best Hope by George Packer. Great book, really important book for a moment. So if you read this, if you read George Packer's other works, if you have other thoughts about this book, let me know, post below. If you have other books that are like this that you would recommend, post them below. I'd love to hear about that kind of stuff. So thanks again for watching.